My name is Kate Nakamura, and I'm a news associate for the Association of Foreign Press Correspondents. Joining us today for our live interview series is Maria Khrenova. Maria is a foreign correspondent based in New York City, covering the United Nations on a permanent basis. Maria is originally from Moscow, Russia, and studied multimedia storytelling at New York University, where she graduated recently in 2020. Maria is a special correspondent for TASS, the Russian news agency. Thank you so much for joining us today, Maria. It's an honor to be here with you.
Hi, Kate, and hi, everyone, and thank you for having me.
So, what has your journey been like in the US so far? Did you ever expect you'd end up here?
Um, well, so far so good, I would say. No, actually, as you mentioned, I'm really focused on covering United Nations, and I mean, it's amazing job. I totally love it. I fell in love with United Nations when I just arrived here for my first ANGA high level week. I think around 5 years ago, and I would say it was my dream to come here to cover it permanently, and then. The dream became true. So I arrived 3 years ago. Yeah, I will celebrate my 3 years anniversary with United Nations this June. Yeah, mostly I work there. Sometimes, of course, I cover United States politics. I was covering elections last year, and I totally like it.
So you're also a new mom. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How have the first few weeks of being a working mom been? Do you feel the challenges are different being a journalist compared to other professions?
Um, well, I didn't try being mom and working other professions, so it's hard to say. But of course, it's not easy. I don't want to sound like over encouraging because probably for myself, I was a bit. I underestimated the challenges of being a mom of a newborn. It's really difficult, but I'm lucky that I have an amazing husband who can share with me all the responsibilities. So if you have a second caregiver for your child, I think it's possible. It's not easy, but if you want to proceed with your career and want to have babies, it's something you need to learn to do. Yeah, to be a mom and to be with your baby, still writing some news with your phone, like at the same time. Well, like one of my colleagues told me before I gave birth, told me a story how she was going live with radio, not TV, luckily, but she was breastfeeding at the same time and was covering some important information. So mostly it's like this: you have to multitask all the time. It's challenging, but it's possible. Um, so yeah, I'm still trying to get used to it. And also I would want to say that for women like me, for I think all women around the world who want to have baby, it's quite a good achievement now that a lot of things are going online. For example, Security Council meetings in United Nations, or some we have virtual briefings now. The briefings which you like before the pandemic, you had to go there to ask the question. Now you can attend them virtually without any problem, to participate, to ask question, and at the same time stay at home with your baby. It's actually quite comfortable.
Yeah, it feels like you've got a good balance there. How did you first become acquainted with the Association of Foreign Press Correspondents, and how do you think that they help foreign journalists such as yourself?
Oh, I met Tanas, the chief of and creator of Foreign Press Association. I think shortly after I arrived to New York, and he was very friendly and helpful, and he talked to me a lot about like challenges of being correspondent from another country in US, which he knew from his own experience. So since then, we always were in touch with him, with other participants of Foreign Press Association, like Bitsul from Turkey and others. And yeah, I always enjoy participating in your events and watching some online events like interviews like this. And yeah, you're doing an amazing job, guys. And as a foreign correspondent in New York, I'm very thankful to you.
And a little bit about your career. Can you speak more about your work in the Russian Foreign Ministry pool? What were your experiences there?
It's yeah, it was before I came here as permanent correspondent. I worked, as you mentioned, I worked for the same agency, TASS News Agency, but covering the work of our foreign ministry. And sometimes when our foreign minister Lavrov traveled abroad, I could come with him to cover his negotiations. It's very challenging because sometimes I had to travel every week, and I almost didn't get some time to spend at home to rest. But at the same time, of course, it's crazy interesting to be in touch with foreign minister, to have opportunity to talk to him on his plane. And Russian foreign minister Lavrov, he's very friendly with journalists. He's very talkative, and he explains a lot. After negotiations, he can explain in like really easy for understanding language why explain just Russian position, why is that, why is this. So I think it was a perfect school for me to prepare myself for being correspondent here in United Nations, where I should cover all the Security Council meetings and also understand deeply Russian position on different matters.
What are the main differences between working in the US and in Russia?
Wow, nice question. So first of all, of course, language, what comes first to my mind. Of course, you have to be fluent with English, and working in UN, I would say another foreign language would be very, very helpful. I think the perfect would be to know French. I don't know French, I know Spanish, which is also very helpful for me. So I would say it's very important to know at least two or better three foreign languages. Also, well, of course, you have to be cautious. Like, I wouldn't lie now being Russian correspondent in US. I mean, in any country being foreign correspondent, you have to know the rules very strictly. And covering elections, for example, you have to know the rules about what is permitted to, if you are allowed to be at the elections, to take some photos, to take some videos and all this stuff. You have to know rules because you're not at home, and if you make something incorrectly, probably it will be difficult to find some help. But well, maybe for this we also have these associations like you guys, like Foreign Press Association, to find some help if there is a difficult situation. So I would say in the US, as in any other foreign country, you just have to be much more cautious comparing with working at home.
Do you feel it's you have to have more caution in the US over Russia?
Well, you mean comparing if as I worked in Russia and
As like a journalist?
well, you know, some things are the same. I'm news agency journalist, so I have to write news really fast, and I have to be really correct. If I do mistakes, it's huge. It's tragic because all other media already picked up my news, and we don't want to spread the fake news, so if mistake happens, we have to correct ourselves as fast as possible. And so in both in Russia, in United States, or in any other countries covering important events, we as news agency journalists, we have to be really precise, really sure about what we are writing, what we are publishing. So I would say it's the same. What is really good for me working in United Nations is that I have opportunity to talk to uh, almost any foreign diplomats from any countries. It's something I didn't have in Russia, of course. We have foreign embassies in Moscow, but some of them are more open to press. Some of them really don't invite press at all. So it was more tricky. Here, I would say I have much more access to different kind of information. I have much more access to people, especially talking about pre-pandemic times when we were all in United Nations in person. We could easily talk to any diplomats, to have lunch, to have coffee, just probably not on the record, just off the record, to understand better their position, to learn more about their countries, some conflicts, some incidents. It's something truly amazing, which is possible only here in New York, only in United Nations, I think.
From an outside perspective, how do you feel about President Biden's first 100 days in office? What has been the tone at the United Nations since he assumed power?
Well, of course, for Russia, it was like first 100 days were not very. Sorry, I lost you for a moment. Are you still hearing me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, sorry. So, yeah, the first 100 days were not very promising because there was this huge incident when, in one of the interviews, President Biden was asked about Russian president if like I probably I'm afraid to misquote, but the message was that he believes that Russian president is a killer or something like this. And of course, I would say it was tragic for our bilateral relations because I believe uh, that a high-level official should understand that such words are really harmful, and it's difficult to overcome. It's difficult after that to work together on some issues, and such countries as Russia and United States, actually, I think they have to work on a lot of issues together. They're at least because they are permanent members of Security Council. They are superpowers and nuclear powers, and there are a lot of topics on their agenda. So first 100 days were challenging for bilateral relations between Russia and United States, definitely. But on the other hand, of course, for multilateralism, Biden was good news. He came back to the Paris Agreement. He also reestablished, I would say, reestablished the good relations between the United States and the United Nations. So I think from this point of view, it was quite a good beginning.
Do you think that in the future, the Biden administration can strengthen or mend ties with the Kremlin?
Now we are all waiting for a summit between two presidents suggested by American Party. So if this summit happens, as they say, probably in June, and it's not clear yet where and when it will happen, but if it happens, of course, it will be a good sign. I think it will help to overcome this current crisis. I think if this meeting is good prepared, probably before that there will be meeting between foreign ministers, between Foreign Minister Lavrov and Secretary of State Blinken, which is also necessary to prepare the summit, to have some clear agenda. If it happens, it will definitely be a good sign. But the meeting, I'm quite sure that the meeting itself isn't helpful. It's important what is discussed on this meeting, because there were in the beginning of Trump's term as a president of United States, there was a meeting between Trump and Putin, and it didn't really help to our bilateral relations. On the contrary, Trump, after this meeting, was accused of being too friendly to Russia and something like this. So to have such meeting, just to have it, is not enough. What is important is to renew the strategic talks on strategic stability, to renew cooperation in United Nations, and just to restart the dialogue in a more good, and I would say in a more polite to each other way.
What are some reactions you've gotten from your Russian audience of the coverage you've done from the US?
Before what first comes to my mind is the reaction I have when I do some social media covering. It's a quite new part of our job now. As a news agency, we're more used just to publishing some news, to write some news, but now quite often we go online. We make stories for our Instagram account, Facebook account, and we have quite a good feedback. I try to explain to people how United Nations work, try to do some interesting videos from United Nations, and it's I believe from the reaction I have that it's really helpful for people to understand, and it's better what's going on. Also, I had some stories about how New York looked in the pandemic, these empty streets, how when it was hit by the first wave of coronavirus, it also had a really huge reaction from people. And a lot of people watched these videos of empty streets. Um, and the covering of elections, presidential elections, also was very well perceived, I would say, because what I try to do when making some stories for social media is to explain it in a really simple way, and it's usually well perceived.
Well, that's good. So there were positive reactions about the election results, or more about your coverage in general?
I don't give my opinion about any results. It's something I try not to do at all. As news agency correspondent, it would be incorrect. But I just try to explain the positions. It was before the elections when Trump and Biden were still candidates. And it wasn't, you remember it until the last moment, it wasn't quite clear who was going to win. So I was trying to explain differences between these two candidates, explain their programs, explain also how the electoral system in United States works, because it's quite different from what we have in Russia. Um, so yeah, I was just trying to explain all of this in easy way. And in terms of results of the elections, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people in Russia probably were expecting Trump to win, but I wouldn't say it was mm, I wouldn't say it was much of a difference. For people here, I talked to some Russian community here in New York. They were hoping that Trump would win, as I understood, because of his tax policy. But in terms of people in Russia, I don't think that Trump or Biden um, was such a huge difference for them.
Okay, interesting. Um, what are some of the pros and cons of being a foreign correspondent for you?
Um, well, mm, definitely con is that that English is a second language for me, so I'm not so fluent in English as I would like to be, as correspondents who were born here. And of course, I think in this regard, it's a bit easier for them to work here. Um, in terms of pros, is well that I get to work in different countries. I worked in Russia and I traveled a lot with foreign minister, and then I came to US. And now I work here, and who knows? Probably I will have some other job as permanent correspondent in another country. So I feel that uh, that I have more opportunities probably to work in different places.
Yeah, that's definitely a big pro. Um, in interviewing all these world leaders at the United Nations, is there anything that has shocked or surprised you in terms of responses to questions, behaviors, maybe even pleasant surprises?
Well, probably my first pleasant surprise was during my first year as correspondent here. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So during my first year as correspondent here, I got to ask Trump a question when he was entering the United Nations building. It's something I definitely wouldn't be able to do in Russia, talking about pros as foreign correspondent. Um, yeah, and I was just, what surprised me is this, that I actually got to ask a question because he himself was choosing um, who is going to ask him the next question. And, Trump is quite unpredictable, so you never know. And there were a lot of correspondents screaming and shouting and raising their hands as usual. So I was also screaming and shouting, and probably I was shouting louder than others. I don't know why, but one of the questions he allowed to ask me. Um, yeah, it was. Very motivational, I would say, for me. Very interesting to have this opportunity to ask him a question. And also, I like in United Nations, I like how it's all a bit unpredictable how your day would end, because once I was really trying to get interview with Foreign Minister Zarif, Foreign Minister of Iran, because I knew he was going to come to visit United Nations, and mm, I was denied the interview because he had very tough schedule. He didn't have time for this, and but after all, I ended actually talking to him just in the United Nations headquarters, because I ran into his delegation and I asked. He was waiting for some meeting. I don't even remember with whom he was going to meet. Probably Secretary General. So he had this like 5 minutes anyway, and he was able to answer a couple of questions. So my point is that sometimes you don't even know who you're going to talk to today going to United Nations, but the important thing is always have in your mind a couple of questions if you run into a foreign minister.
Good advice. Do you remember the question that you got to ask Trump?
Yeah, I asked if he's going to meet with Russian president, Mr. Putin. It was at that time it was the same main question as now is the meeting between Putin and Biden. Everybody is asking about it, like when, where. So yeah, I asked probably the most important meeting at that point. He answered that he wants to meet Mr. Putin, which was quite a huge news, like such positive reaction. Yeah, but I don't actually remember. I think a lot of time passed after my questions and until they finally really met. So sometimes this preparation of summits really take time. So we will see with Putin Biden summit how much it will take until they finally really meet.
I'd actually like to ask you the same question you asked Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the UN, during your interview with him for TASS. What was your assessment of what's your assessment of Russia's contribution to fighting the COVID-19 pandemic?
It's huge contribution. It's really huge, and it's just something some countries don't want to acknowledge for, I think, political reasons. But Russia reacted really fast. I was quite proud. I can say it quite sincerely. Having family in Russia, I was very worried, and I was trying to, uh, you know, um, to tell my mom, to tell my grandmother in advance until New York was hit first. So before it came to Moscow, that you have to be cautious, that you have to stay at home. And I really didn't know how the situation will be there, because we all know that some health systems in different countries were not mm, um, like were not strong enough at this moment. But with Russia, it was luckily it was quite okay. The government reacted fast. They implemented quarantine in Moscow, for example. It was really strict quarantine, but I believe it was necessary. It helped. And talking about international contribution, Russia developed the vaccine, the anti-COVID vaccine first in all the world. And a lot of my friends already got this vaccine and they have antibodies now, so it really works. The side effects are not different from Pfizer's here, for example. It's also like after second shot, you can get a bit um, a bit tired, a bit sick, but nothing special. So this vaccine really works, and it was the first one developed, and Russia is ready um, to deliver this vaccine in those countries which need it. So it's not just vaccine for Russia and that's it. It was already delivered to more than 60 countries. It was also Russian president's suggestion to use it for United Nations staff here in New York and in other places, in United Nations peacekeeping missions, for example. And this suggestion is still in place. There is some delay with approving this vaccine in World Health Organization. Well, I don't know why is this delay. It's up to professionals to decide, of course, but I really hope that when this vaccine is approved, it will be used in a lot of countries and including in United Nations mission.
How do you feel about Russia's response to the pandemic in comparison to America's?
It was better. In Russia, it was better. I think, of course, partly because Russia had luckily just luckily Russia had more time to prepare. Uh, you remember that after China, first it was it was Italy, which had most cases, and then it was United States, and especially New York, which had enormous amount of COVID cases. So Russia was hit a bit later and already could watch the experience of other countries and not to repeat the same mistakes which other countries did. So I think, first of all, the Russian government was able not to repeat these mistakes, and also um, it was more well, like the structure of countries is very different, and of course here it's more different from state to state. So different states had different measures against the spread of COVID. In Russia, it was more centralized, and I think it helped that around the country, um, all necessary measures were taken. And also, the health, as it turned out, the health system, the Russian doctors, they did amazing job and they were prepared. Of course, as in other countries, they had to work, over hours. They had to work like several shifts in a row. I can't imagine how hard it was for them, but after already like 2 waves of the pandemic passed in Russia, I can say that Russian health system was quite prepared for such challenges.
Yeah, so things are really looking up now.
I hope so. With vaccination of people here and in Russia as well, I think that yeah, now it should be getting better.
I wanted to ask you, what piece or work are you most proud of?
Well, you mentioned my interview with Secretary General of United Nations. I'm quite proud of this one because it was, first of all, because I was quite late in my pregnancy. It was difficult. It was even difficult to find some, official clothes which I would fit in. And conversation was quite friendly, quite open, I would say. He answered my questions quite sincerely, and I really liked that conversation. It's very important for me to, if I enjoy the conversation while having this interview, I know already that in the interview on paper will turn out to be good and interesting for audience. So I'm really proud of this one. Yes, some more interviews were quite interesting uh, during my work in United Nations. I had interviews with Foreign Minister of Venezuela, Foreign Minister of Iran, as I already mentioned, with some high-ranking Russian officials, of course. Um, Also, I'm quite proud about my work during the pandemic because I was going out a lot. I was filming, I was making some social media videos about how it looks, how it feels, and I tried to talk to people. Though everybody already was wearing masks and it was a bit um, unclear if we actually can talk to each other or no. It wasn't clear at that time how bad is this virus and how easily it is spread. But I tried to do my best to cover the situation here. Also, probably taking into account that I wouldn't want the same thing happen for Moscow and for other big cities around the world. So I try to cover the situation as much as possible, and I'm really proud of what I did at that time a year ago.
Is there a project that you're working on right now?
Yeah, I have one project in mind. Probably it's better not to tell in advance sometimes, but okay. N- the In the end of May, 29th of May, it's celebrated the International Day of Peacekeepers, and now I'm trying to talk to different peacekeepers around the world to learn more about their work, how it looks like, what's the like day-to-day life there in peacekeeping missions. And I'm working on a project about peacekeeping missions and about peacekeepers, um, because I was lucky enough to visit once Mali, mm, where the United Nations have one of the most dangerous missions, and um, if you watch the statistics, most peacekeepers are killed in Mali, and it was very interesting for me to watch how they work there, to talk to peacekeepers there. It impressed me greatly, how challenging their life is, how challenging their work is. Um, After that, I wrote about it from time to time, but now I want to make like a bigger project, more focused on, not focused on politics, but more on their personal feelings about it.
Well, I think we all look forward to seeing that. Um, to wrap this up a little bit, you recently graduated yourself. Do you have any advice for other foreign journalists just starting out or journalists who want to work abroad in general?
Well, probably my main advice is that you have to be multitasking now. It's the necessity, it's a must. It's not enough just to be a good interviewer or, I don't know, just to write, to have a good writing style. It's just not enough anymore. You have to do everything like good photos, good videos. You have to be quite technologically advanced. You have to know how things work, how edit your videos, because it's not always possible to get the editors to help you quite fast, especially with time difference, for example, between me and Moscow. I have to do a lot of this stuff myself. That's why also um, I understood that I needed this additional education with NYU about multimedia storytelling, and it was helpful. So just yeah, my advice is just to educate yourself as much as possible and try to learn new things. If you are technologically advanced already, try to read more, try to improve your style. If you have a great style, try to like improve your technological education and so on. Just try to educate yourself.
Is there anything you'd like to say to our audience? Where can we find your work?
My work is always published on our news agency website, our news agency social media. So it's TASS News Agency. It's Russian, I would say, Russian biggest news agency. We have the biggest net of correspondents around the world. We have not only mine, but every day we have videos posted on our social media from different countries. And now, for example, it's Israel, which is in top news, and our correspondent in Israel, I would say I'm really proud of him. He's not afraid of going there, like filming, sharing some advices, for example, about how to act when the missile strike, how to be safe during this situation. So yeah, TASS media, TASS Instagram, Facebook. We have English Wire, so we have English website as well. And yeah, my work is also there. My articles and interviews are all there.
Well, thank you so much, Maria, for joining us, and thank you to everyone else who tuned in. This was a great interview. Really good to meet you.
Thank you, Kate, and thanks, Thanos, again for creating this organization. I really support your work, guys, and thank you for everything you're doing. And everyone who is watching, just have a great day.
Thank you.